Hello, dear friends. The quantum era defines the paradigm of the impossible in real time. Opinion piece. Quantum key. Silent revolution. Discrete operations. Freezing of illicit funds. Unhackable sovereignty. Mathematical transition. Systemic transformation. Paradigm of the impossible. Activation of the quantum key. Not all walls fall in a single day. Let's start. The quantum key is the lever of decentralized power of the new infrastructure that replaces the old binary control software. It is a control and auditing mechanism that deactivates the protection of legacy banking and cryptocurrencies using quantum computing and activates instead the allied quantum infrastructure and the QFS within the user framework. There are keys made of metal and there are keys made of code, but the most powerful lever that humanity has ever acquired is not held in one hand, not hidden in a vault, and not kept in a bank. It originates from the deepest layer of computing and is called the quantum key. A global transformation process toward a financial and technological system based on quantum computing is being heavily developed, according to the latest Guardian article by Daniel, which places this change on track until its projected culmination on January 20th, 2029, and links it to the replacement of the current economic model with an asset-backed quantum infrastructure in order to dismantle legacy networks of control and security. Daniel describes a global transition to a technological and financial system based on quantum computing, presented as a silent transformation of the world order. This transition relies on the so-called quantum key, a tool capable of overcoming the limitations of traditional binary encryption through the use of qubits, superposition, and quantum entanglement. Furthermore, this transition is unfolding capitally without affecting essential services, while a mathematical revolution is being carried out globally. It also mentions the declassification of intelligence data that would reveal systemic infiltrations, as well as the use of orbital quantum technology to ensure superiority in communications and processing. In the area of security, any intrusion attempt would immediately collapse the system, recording the interference. Under this scheme, the freezing of illicit funds and the prosecution of those deemed responsible are proposed within the framework of international tribunals. Full thought summary. Given the overall situation, it is clear that we need an international meeting this fall to revitalize the Western system. This will require a jubilee allowing for the cancellation of all debts, both public and private. This will also entail a redistribution of resources. Furthermore, we must create an organization to plan for the future. An agreement has already been reached at the highest level between the secret societies of East and West. From now on, our goal as a species will be to increase the quantity and diversity of life, including human life. The only thing preventing a new Cambrian explosion on this planet is the ancient death cult that controls the Western elite. They have never been weaker than they are now in thousands of years. If we all worked together, we could overthrow them and liberate humanity. Medical bets. French contactee Elena Dran claims to have visited a medical-backed manufacturing plant on the moon. She asserts that this technology is being developed under the control of a coalition for use on Earth to heal humanity. The author emphasizes that there are no publicly available dates or locations for this deployment, and that in the meantime, scams related to the sale of these devices are proliferating. Elena insists that much of this operation unfolds behind the scenes, in parallel with conflicts, weather phenomena, and earthquakes that serve as a smokescreen. The final recommendation is to remain observant, connect the dots, and wait for the full picture of what is happening to become clear. Doctrine. The doctrine of the quantum key, the declassification of the protocol, the geometry of mathematical purification, and the total expiration of the binary control software are the topics of Karian Daniels' latest article. He also explains the activation of the Allied quantum infrastructure, the systemic destruction of legacy encryption networks through orbital qubits, and the migration of the SWIFT system, cryptocurrencies, and other frameworks for databases within the asset-backed quantum financial system. Mathematical transition to the user infrastructure. Activation of the quantum key delivers the technological shield required to stabilize the field within the transformation corridor, leading to the official conclusion of the mandate on January 20, 2029. The current systemic transformation unfolds in the shadows, with such precise execution that critical public services remain impenetrable every millisecond, while the administrative landscape of the legacy order evaporates in the public eye. This represents a silent mathematical revolution moving through the networks before the general public grasps the scope of the migration. Allied Law Enforcement Protocol. Mathematical transcendental transformation and collapse of the binary shields. The official declassification of forensic analysis of unredacted intelligence data verifies that the systemic electoral infiltration and the liquidation of dark side networks rely on superior transmission hardware supremacy, anchored in orbit. Security. For decades, the legacy civil matrix relied on closed systems. Banks trusted their encryption. Governments trusted their databases. Transnational corporations trusted their private networks. And cryptocurrency holders trusted their wallets, keys, and chains. Operating in the shadows, dark side institutions believed that certain doors could never be opened because the binary mathematics behind them were too complex and impossible to break. However, the quantum era defines the paradigm of the impossible in real time. A quantum computer operates outside the limited architecture that governs conventional information technology. It doesn't process data sequentially in bits or of ones or zeros, but rather uses the physical principle of superposition and quantum entanglement through orbital qubits. This technology views mathematical problems from a completely new dimension of power. When this computing execution reaches its operational form, every system built on legacy binary software faces the ultimate reality. Those old systems were never truly secure. They were only protected by the limitations of conventional processing speed. Therefore, the quantum key represents the executive capacity to subject any closed structure of the old world to uncompromising scrutiny. The global financial pathway, the banking infrastructure, digital identity management, legacy encryption norms, and the entire hidden architecture that has monopolized access to the Earth's resources for far too long. Confiscation. Complete exclusion from the SWIFT system and sealing of the quantum financial system. The deployment of this technological apparatus triggers an unstoppable selection across the global resource market, carrying out a total foreclosure of the legacy order within the shadow of the G7's collapse. Unconditional disavowal of legacy banking and cryptocurrency systems. Not all walls fall in a single day, but every protected binary hash is completely dismantled within this transitional corridor. Traditional encryption methodologies administered through legacy central banking, such as the compromised SWIFT network, as well as the non-isolated architecture of commercial cryptocurrency blockchains, are decrypted by quantum technology in real time. When this test begins, the global field will split into two groups: those prepared for allied protocols within the authentic FLO, and those who believe the old corporate shields of the dark side will last forever. Applying the security paradox to everyday life, the legacy world has built locked doors that could be breached through kinetic or digital interventions. Allied protocols and the Law of War manual, on the other hand, established a protected and adaptable security framework. A living system adapts, reinforces itself, verifies itself in real time, and safeguards unhackable sovereignty. This is the structural reference point upon which the quantum financial system operates. Any unauthorized measurement or interception recorded in an entangled quantum state immediately collapses the signal, recording the intrusion in the justice system's allied ledger. Because the dark side has armed major corporations and the economic elite using these outdated methods to subvert security, the mastery of quantum technology is being leveraged to freeze illicit funds in the shadows. In a split second, exhaustively liquidating layers through the levers of executive orders, while targets are persecuted as illegal combatants before Nuremberg 2.0 military tribunals. Reconciliation. The truth is coming out, but the media blackout remains too strong. People are slowly waking up, but it will take a huge effort to achieve a decisive breakthrough. The day the truth comes out will bring massive public outrage and a surge in protests, demands, and calls for accountability. Trust in institutions will collapse even further, and governments will face a crisis of legitimacy. The political fallout will be devastating. Heads will roll, with calls for investigations, resignations, and criminal charges against key figures. There would also be a social divide between those who say, "I told you so," versus those who deny reality or benefit from the narrative. Some relationships would be damaged forever. It would be one of the biggest scandals in modern history. That is why they are fighting so hard to keep it hidden. 144,000. Mr. Kitpool maintains that the critical mass of 144,000 starseeds has activated spiritual frequency capable of triggering a global awakening. In his view, when 144,000 human beings achieve DNA activation and a high-frequency state, the matrix signal that sustains the collective illusion will collapse, activating a planetary light network and accelerating humanity's transition from the third to the fifth dimension of consciousness. The author presents the number 144,000 not only as a biblical figure, but as a mathematical frequency that defines the critical mass capable of tipping the scales of global consciousness. These 144,000 are souls incarnated to anchor a new frequency that carries master codes in their DNA activated as a solar flare approaches. Mr. Kitbull asserts that the 144,000 do not form a closed group, but rather a frequency that has already become dominant, initiating a countdown to full revelation. In this awakening, humanity is entering an age of light that entails a total rewriting of human experience. He describes the so-called Great Reset of Davos as a false version driven by the cabal, compared to an authentic awakening based on the power of the activated human heart. The author maintains that the elite are aware of this number and keep the population divided through conflicts of race, religion, and politics to prevent the integration of this critical mass. The coalition has confirmed that the threshold has been reached, that the power grid is active, and that the collapse of banks, governments, and media outlets is a response to the loss of power fueled by collective fear. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.